So another thing we want to talk about, guys, is, what do you do when a patient comes in and says, well, I'm not sure, doc, I'm going to have to go home and think about it. This is a very easy point for a lot of doctors I see just give up, say, gosh, another one that said they had to think about it. They're not going to sign up for care, and they just kind of give up. Okay, something along these lines, like, okay, well, hey, give us a call if you change your mind or you decide to come back in, or even like, do you want us to follow up with you in a couple days? They'll always say yes to get out of your office as graciously and comfortably as they possibly can. But what I've found over the years is whenever somebody tells me that they'll have to think about it, I do a lot better by challenging that right in the moment, not in a harsh, meaning way, but in a really caring, concerning way. Understand these people leave my office, they do have a chronic progressive degenerative condition, and if we don't start treatment, more than likely they're just going to continue to keep getting worse. I don't want that. They don't want that. It's not in their best interest to walk out of our office and go home and think about it, because if they go think about it and they come up with more questions, who's going to be there to answer their questions? So I'll tell them that, like, if you've got more questions, there's things you need to think about. Let's go ahead and talk about them now, because I'm not going to be there at home when you spend time thinking about it. And when it comes to what you're going to think about, for most people, I find it's usually one of two things. It's either time or money. Which one is it for you? And then you just shut up and wait for them to respond. And if they tell you that it's time, say, well, talk to me about that. I remember a story of a really high level of executive of a top 100 Inc. company that most of you would recognize. And he said, well, you said it was 3 times a week I had to come here. I just can't get away from the office. That would just be impossible for me to do it. Okay, I'm glad you told me that. Well, I tell you what, we actually have a 100% at-home neuropathy therapy treatment program that you can actually do from the comfort of your desk at the office and probably get all your therapy and treatment done. And we can just recheck you, periodically to see how you're progressing. He actually did that, got about an 85% improvement, and he was super thrilled and happy. But he would have never have got that if when he said, well, I have to go home and think about it, and I would have just let him walk without digging a little deeper and inquiring as to why that is. And if they say it's money, well, that's something we can often figure out ways. It's not necessarily the money or the total amount. They're trying to figure out how to work it into their budget. Well, we have payment plan options, or one guy, I just sat there. Sometimes you just keep talking to the patient and you get them to start thinking, and I'll even see their eyes kind of do that thing where they go up into the top of their head as I'm interacting with them. I just telling them stories about other patients with similar conditions, or I just keeping them engaged. The door's open. They could walk out if they really wanted to, but they don't. They usually will just sit there. And I remember this one guy, when he said he couldn't afford it, but as we sat talking, he's like, well, you know what? He says, I can go ahead and start this because I've only got one more payment left on my Cadillac. And I suppose I could just take that payment for my Cadillac once I paid off my car, and I could just take that same payment and use it to pay for this and get my feet better. What do you think about that? Like, I think that sounds like a really good solution. My whole point is, by just continuing to engage and keep the patient there and keep talking to them, they will often figure out and solve their own problem in real time as you're sitting there with them. And I have found over time that I'm able to turn 30 to 35% of those no's, or I'll have to go home and think about it, into yeses during the same visit during that time. So please make sure that you do that and challenge that by asking those questions. Well, if you're going to have to go home and think about it, what are you going to think about? Is it time or money? Those are usually the things for most people. Which one is it for you? So try that out in your office and see if that doesn't get you a whole lot more yeses.